Welcome to the Leadership Guide, the show that takes you from peak performer to legendary leader by helping you unlock your heroic potential to emerge into who you are meant to be. On today's episode, we have a conversation with Lyons and discuss #real tweets, the importance of a foundation with true authenticity, why the sexy thing doesn't usually win, and what are some things to watch out for with the next few generations. I'm your host, Cody Dakota, founder of the Leadership Guide, member of the Forbes Coaches Council, and finalist for the Extraordinarian Award for coaches with ideas that can change people, businesses, and the world for the better for my ideas on leadership. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to discover how to join the League of Legendary Leaders, an association of leaders with the goal to raise $100,000 monthly to support nonprofit causes which are currently looking to impact the world and make it better for future generations. Now, on to the show. Hey, Lori, how are you doing today?
I am awesome, Cody. How are you doing?
I am living life and I am loving life, and I am hearing some birds from your end of the camera, which is kind of awesome. It's like this nice, like serene bird chirping going on.
It's my white noise background. They only come on when I go on podcast.
Hey, you've trained them really well then.
Yeah. Like my children, they only do what I don't want them to do.
Isn't that how it always is? Like, whenever you want something to work out a very specific way, it just does not happen exactly like that. And sometimes just completely opposite of what you want.
Absolutely. Well, they're going to chirp in as needed. Ha ha.
#tweets? Question mark?
#real tweets.
This isn't your new generation tweets. This is your grandparents' version.
Yeah, this is my generation tweets.
Oh my goodness. So Lori, I would love for you to tell us all about what it is you do and the awesome things you're working on in the world.
Yeah, I'm my main company is Ignite Marketing, and I'm a website design company. My company does websites for small business owners, focusing primarily on small business owners who are coming out of the corporate world, that are perhaps they've retired and they're looking for something to do, want to start a new business. They've been downsized or laid off and they can't get another job, so they're starting their own business. So that's my primary focus. And from that, it led into my online marketing program called Make Your Marketing Simple, which is an online marketing program to teach entrepreneurs how to market their business in a simple, easy to understand language. So I'm teaching them the nuts and bolts. There are a lot of coaches out there who will teach the overview. So I'm teaching the nuts and bolts of how to do it.
That's awesome, because you're right. There is a lot of overview out there. There is a lot of you need to get on this platform and generally do this kind of thing. But then so many people in the entrepreneurial world especially kind of are trying to put themselves out into the world, and they're not having any success at all in being able to actually get noticed.
Correct. They're frustrated. They're confused. They don't know where to start. And a lot of it starts with, I go back to my website company, a lot of it starts with a good foundation. They forget that. You need the foundation. You need some place to drive people to, so that they can find out who you are, rather than just the sound bites that are typical in social media today. So, it's something that I really enjoy. It's kind of a meandering path that led me there. And it's and something I'm pretty darn good at. So it's a win-win for everybody.
That's awesome. And I love that you said that you need to have that foundation, right?
Correct.
Because this happens all the time in all areas of life. We try and go for these extreme goals, these extreme things. We try and go all in on these things. But until you have that foundation, no matter how high you try to build something, it's going to collapse. It's just like if you try to build a house on a bad foundation, that house is going to collapse on itself.
Exactly. Or no foundation.
Exactly.
And look at all the business owners that went into business panic a couple of weeks ago when Facebook went down. It's like, oh my gosh, if your business is based on a Facebook business page or a group, you don't have a business for a couple of hours when it's down. So there was talk for a while about, our website's obsolete. Do we really still need them? Well, yeah, you still do, because there's where a lot of ththings are housed, and it's the main corporate office for a lot of businesses.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
And on top of that, like it's one of those put all your money into one basket, right? When you do that, you're completely betting on that basket to always succeed. And the thing is, it's very rare in life that one basket always succeeds.
Correct. And in this one case, you should own the basket. You should control the basket. You control what goes in that basket. You control what goes out of that basket. You control what that basket looks like. You control what it sounds like. You control how it represents you. So there's a lot of benefit to having, in this case, that one basket. So it's that's what I promote to my clients is, I had a client just the other day who called me, and we're going to do some marketing for him, and said, I can't do anything until we build your foundation, because your foundation is not a solid foundation. We can't drive people to your website to learn more about you. You're a great company. You've been in business for a long time. You're a great guy. You're a great personality, but we got to build that foundation to let other people see who you are and what you stand for, because that's the world we're in today. People want to know who they're working with.
Definitely. Yeah. It's extremely important to the younger generation, my generation and the generation below me, that we want to know what are the values of the individuals we're working with and working for, because we've, especially in the world that I've seen, and this is a huge reason why I'm working on the movement I'm working on, is we've seen so many companies keep things behind the curtains and not out in the open. And so many organizations, it's not just business, it's in the homes, it's in politics, it's in our churches, it's all over the place where people are keeping things behind the curtains. And when the curtains get drawn, we're really unhappy about the things we're finding, because they're sometimes awful, terrible things. And so we don't want to be associated with those awful, terrible things. And so we're kind of fighting to say, hey, tell us what those awful things are right now, and we'll make a decision if we're okay with trying to fix those things.
Exactly. And and everybody's definition of awful can be very different. There's awful that are or social awful and social mores that we all know what those are. But there are other things that can happen that some people don't care about and some people do. So it really, I think a lot of it comes down to not only being transparent, it comes down to being human, and what companies are human, and what companies people can relate to. And there's a lot of talk about being authentic. Yeah. Well, define authentic. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to me? It's showing the warts. It's showing, it's not just showing. There's a gentleman who does a podcast, and his name escapes me right now, but he shows his financials every month. Now that's pretty darn transparent and authentic.
Yeah, that's extremely transparent.
Yeah. Yes. So but that's a pretty cool place to be when you're working with people. Is how authentic and transparent are they?
Definitely, yeah, and it's so big. Now for you, what would you say is the best way about going and being authentic? How would you go about guiding someone into being more authentic? Because it's the way it's said is very broad, and the way people interpret it sometimes is actually very inauthentic in the way it's interpreted.
And it's almost become kind of a catchphrase, like, well, let's be authentic. But until you define what authentic really is, then how do you know if somebody's being authentic? Your authentic may be very different from my authentic, that may be very different from somebody else's authentic. And I guess to me, authentic means that you're being yourself, you're being human, you're being relatable, you're being empathetic and caring about other people. And I guess that's for me what's important. And to me, part of being authentic is being yourself and having fun. Because I also feel that, to me, business is just darn fun. Now, I don't think it's fun to put my gas receipts into my smartphone app. That's not fun.
Yeah,
but fun is working with
tax
people.
Purposes.
Exactly. That's not fun.
Just finished tax season.
Yeah.
Like what, a week ago? And
a week ago today.
I don't know about you. Taxes took me forever this year. Now, I will admit I got a pretty significant kickback, which I'm excited for.
Yeah.
And all that money is going to go right back into my business.
Absolutely.
I'm not partying with that money. It's going right back into the business. But man, the taxes took a while.
Oh yeah.
And I choose to do my own taxes because I have an accounting background. So I kind of know the different things that are supposed to be going into the taxes. So that's a choice I've made because I
we'll
have
talk next year.
I'll
put it on my calendar for March 1st. We'll talk next year.
Yeah, maybe next year I'll hire it out because it took way too long and I had other stuff to do that evening. And I was sitting at the computer screen I did it on Sunday because I knew I wasn't going to have time on Monday. And I was sitting at the computer screen for like 16 hours between taxes and other work I had to do that day. And that's not honestly how I want to spend most Sundays.
Right. Well, and I have a little bit different philosophy too. I don't necessarily mind paying taxes. I don't like it, but I don't necessarily mind it because I feel like the more I pay, the more money I'm making. So I'm there's that kind of back and forth of kind of okay with it because this is kind of cool. But now let's see how I can reduce my tax burden. Okay, now that I've done this, okay, now let's see what I can do. But it's but to me that part of business is not fun. But the fun part of business is doing stuff like this. It's it's talking to clients. It's being who you are and finding out really who they are and getting to know them. And that's the fun part of having a boutique business is you really get to know people. I wouldn't do well working with somebody like, a bigger corporation. I wouldn't do well working with Netflix or Amazon because they're just, that's just not the type of business that I want. And it's fun to me. I like small business. I like being able to delve in to really find out and make a difference. So I guess, kind of a long around run of what's authentic, but, being human.
Yeah, and I think you're not only just talking about what is authenticity, but you're explaining it from your point of view of how you're authentic. Because you're talking about these things that you'd like to do and you'd rather not do, and you're actually living into it. One of the things that I personally think is really behind authenticity is you walk the talk. It's not about just saying it, it's about actually doing it. Right. Like for me, I have a huge value in family. Right. Mm-hmm. And so for me, when something comes up in someone's life that's around family, I'm almost always willing to move things around and do whatever needs to be done so that not only myself, but so those individuals can actually live with their family, which should be the most important, the most important unit around you, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100% that it's, that there's a certain flexibility that I think you need as a small business owner to be able to accommodate family values, faith, all of that can come into play and into what makes you authentic and what makes you a real company and what makes you a good company to work with, no matter what your business.
Definitely. I 100% agree with you on that. And that, you touch on something I think is really important is it's not just about living it and saying it for your own sake, but for the sake of your clients and the people you work with. Even if you're not a business, say you're the leader in a corporation, right? It's so the people that work under you, right? You're the people who report directly to you, and sometimes even the people that report to them, right? They know who they're working with. So they can know if the values align. And I think that's so important is making sure that the values align, because what I've found is that if my values don't align with someone else's values, it's really freaking hard to work with those people.
Oh
And
yeah.
they usually don't want to work with me either.
Yeah. Well, and those are the ones that are always the problem, whether it's the problem on your end or it's the problem on their end. And your instinct tells you, this is probably not a customer I should take on right now, but either your bottom line is talking more than your head is, or, there's, that you can help them. You just know it's going to be really hard. And it always comes back. It always comes back.
Yeah. I was talking to a good friend of mine recently, and she was talking about how in her business, there was a client that she had in her business that was taking up like 40% of her time, and they were a very low paying client.
Yeah.
And like she felt like she had to work for them because they were paying, basically, and she hated it. And she ended up making the decision to cut them out. She became a lot happier. She ended up making a lot more money because she filled that time in with better people. And the other company actually was kind of happy too, because they just were no longer really into the service that was going on. They wanted something very different than what was going on. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you can't serve everybody as much as we would like to. It just doesn't work out like that.
Yeah, you can't serve everybody. And just like in a dating relationship, there's somebody out there for everybody. I feel like you finally realize you've become a grown-up business when you fire your first client, or you lay them off, or you let them go, or whatever you want to, whatever the relationship is, whether they're fired or laid off. But that's when you're a grown-up business, when you do that the first time, and it's like, yeah, that was really kind of cool. Because it's going to be a better win for everybody. I know the analogy, I'm a sports person too, we had talked about that earlier, is that when something is not working for an athlete, they change coaches. And typically they're both happier because a new coach can come in with a new set of eyes and see something different that the old coach couldn't, because you get so used to seeing the same thing. So I think to me, it's almost like a business relationship that when that there is something that is not working, another set of eyes can
change everything.
Yes. Yeah. Or change one small thing that the other person didn't see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh, and when that doesn't happen, right, when the same coach is left in there, it can lead to the ruination of the team. I had a coach in high school for lacrosse. He was absolutely awful. I remember that there were two very specific things that he looked for in an athlete. And actually really just one thing he looked for, and it was outside shooting, which basically means in lacrosse, that means that you shoot from anywhere from like 10 to 20 yards away from the goal. So you have to have a lot of power to be able to do that. And if you could do that, you were a favorite player of his. That was only thing he looked for, though. And so I remember being on the team, and I myself am not an outside shooter. That's just not how I'm designed. That's not how I'm built. But you put me on the crease, I could get the goals. And the crease is right next to the goal. You put me in the crease, I could set the picks. You put me in the crease, I could create the situations. Or I could get the ball passed around, which is also extremely important in lacrosse. And he didn't value any of that. And there are multiple people on our team who were players like that, who never saw game time because he was only looking for that one thing. Right. And he had his couple of favorite players who had some terrible attitudes to go along with their skills. And the team was okay. We weren't great, and we should have been great. We should have been one of the best teams in the state, but we weren't, because we weren't functioning as a full team. And the coach was never removed. And I went on to college, and I ended up getting a coach while in college who actually came from my home state of Colorado. And he told me that, since I'd left, the team there got even worse because they left the same coach there. And that's the power of what happens when you have people who aren't fully aligned with what are the objectives, right? Right. His objective was just getting good outside shooters, not creating a great team.
Well, because the outside shooters are probably the sexy part of lacrosse.
Very.
That's the that's the 3-pointer in basketball. That's the the home run hitter in baseball. Those are the ones that
Exactly.
people notice and see. But it's the inside crease. It's the people who are making the stuff move every single day in small increments that move everything forward a whole lot better and a whole lot more consistent than the outside shooters or the home run hitters.
Exactly.
So
And
yeah,
I mean, what happened from there for me was I was in a generation of players who were pretty good. They I wouldn't say we were the best in the state, but we were in contention for some of the
yeah,
best players in the state. And I was the only one from my generation, from that graduated from that high school, who actually continued to play NCAA lacrosse throughout the
wow,
entire college career. It's
yeah,
because it was not the, it's not the right fit. And they were
yeah,
fantastic players, but they weren't getting played right. And when
right.
they went on to college, they didn't know how to play right. And either they had to try and figure it out and didn't, or they just didn't care about lacrosse enough to continue on.
Yeah. Or here's another analogy that you can pull from that is they were so beat down with their passion was so beat down because all they did, and you can't see me online, but I'm doing
The quote unquote all they did.
Unquote, yeah, all around is because they were doing the everyday stuff that makes things go forward. Their passion was beat down because they weren't the outside shooter or they weren't the home run hitter. So therefore they lost their passion and weren't willing to work hard where they could have been the star athlete that that went, but it was beat down from them. And I think that's the analogy that you can bring to the workplace is that,
Oh yeah.
is you have the people who are the ones who do the everyday stuff and they don't get the recognition or they don't get the glory because they're not the home run hitter. Sure, it's fun to hit the home run, but if you're doing the work day in and day out and you're doing it at a good, authentic, human scale pace, then I think that's a great place to be. It's hard to hit home runs every at bat.
Yeah. And like, let's face it, if you look at Major League Baseball, right? You don't have that many Major League Baseball players who are home run hitters. There's very few of them. They're like on a single team, maybe there's 3 of them that are regular players on the team. It's not that many when you have the full lineup. And usually they're not the first ones up to bat. Why? Because they need other people on base to make them really effective.
Right. And what do we glorify? What do we hold in high esteem? It's the home run hitter. So I think it's the nature of humans that we look for the superstars and we look for but in everyday real life, grunt level business day to day, it's it's the players that are in the crease. It's the players that bat for average. It's it's the people who block shots in basketball. And I'm out of sports analogies, but
but it's so true. And how many businesses go under because they don't appreciate the people who do the little work. They only they put so much focus on the all-star hitter that they lose the rest of their team who is actually doing the legwork to get the home run winner to actually succeed at such a high level.
Right. And that's, and to kind of pull it back around, that's what I see so often on, when I'm scrolling through Facebook or the Instagrams or, and looking at all the ads and stuff. And I see, and I've gotten to where I don't even go on webinars anymore. I hate to say this because I just get tired of being told I live in a bazillion-dollar house and I do this and I do this. And how much of that is truly authentic and how much of that is really real? Because, are they truly home run hitters or are they just pretending to be? So
that's such a big problem in all of the marketing on social media that you see. You see like the 20-something-year-old kid in a Lamborghini and they're like, yeah, I have 6 of these bad boys and I live in a mansion. And it's all like, do you actually own all of that? Or
did you lease them for the shoot?
Yeah. Did you rent them for like an hour so that you could like quickly take all these videos and make it sound like you're really cool and not actually be cool?
Yeah. Because I guess my feeling is that if you really own 6 Lamborghinis, you probably only have to show one. do you really have to show all six? But anyway,
Yeah.
it's kind of a little far away where we're going. But I think it's an interesting place where we are now. Is it seems that you have to show the home runs, you have to show the bigger to be appreciated. It's not the little everyday stuff that you do all the day long. Yeah.
Well, and like I may be a little facetious, but I see someone like that and I'm kind of like, I think you're probably a bad business owner because there's so much waste in your money right there. Like, because those cars, one, are expensive. Two, they're expensive to upkeep.
Yeah.
You have a mansion, that's great. They cost a lot of money to upkeep. I was reading this story of online earlier today of a mansion that 50 Cent owned, right? He wasn't living there. Like, no one was living there. Like, this is how it had been left alone for so long. Someone stole from the property and 50 Cent reportedly said, "Oh, I thought I got rid of that house."
Oh,
right?
Wow.
Now this house, right, costs $70,000 per month to maintain. Per month. That is what, $850,000, $920,000 a year. I mean, you're rubbing up close to $1 million a year just for upkeep for a house that no one is using. So if you're living, and I'm not saying the mansions in these in these videos are that big, right? But if you're living in a mansion that size, you're probably paying a couple $1,000s per month on upkeep and taxes alone. And are you actually using that mansion to its fullest extent? My guess is probably not. And if you're fully using the mansion, you're probably fully using it for the wrong reasons, like parties and stuff. And so like to me, I see that and I'm not only not impressed, right? But I'm actually kind of turned off because I feel like you could be using that money in so many better ways to make your business a lot better. Like maybe one cool sports car, great. Have a great house too. I'm not saying like you should live in a shack in the middle of the woods, right? Like, sure, have a good house, but like also live with what you need, not just like all these fancy gizmos and gadgets that have no purpose in the end.
Well, there's something to be said though for the flip side of, if they truly are making that amount of money and they're doing their life's purpose and they're helping people along with this, then and you want to spend $70,000 that you throw out with the bathwater every month, great. I gotta tell you in all transparency, I ain't there yet.
That's okay. I'm not either.
That's not me. My grass needs cutting. The floor needs vacuuming, and
definitely
it's real life. But
and you know what? I would love to be in a position to be able to spend $70,000 per month on my home for maintenance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like, if I'm not living there, right?
Right.
Or if I'm not able to fully utilize the house, it's still a waste, right? And I mean, like, some of these mansions are like 10 plus rooms. Like, okay, so do you have 10 plus people living in the house daily? Right?
Yeah.
And possibly more, because sometimes significant others, right? And hopefully you're living in the same room if they're your significant other, right? At least that's my hope.
Yeah,
that's my hope of how people should live when they're married and stuff. And it doesn't always work out that way, to my dismay, but that's life sometimes.
That's
and
the way it happens. That's
like if you have people living in all 10 of those rooms, awesome, that's great. And you have the ability to have $70,000 per month go out the window just for maintenance, awesome, go for it. Right? I'm not saying like those are bad. It's more when like you obviously don't need all of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes, Cody, it becomes a matter of my mind can expand that big to understand the mentality of throwing away $70,000. And that's probably why I don't have $70,000 to throw away, because my mind doesn't expand that. I'm probably a little more practical than that, but it's hey, it's more power to you if you're there, if you treat it well. And I think that's part of it is, being able to treat what you're given with respect and to do good things with it. And, and I'm not going to go to be so trite as to help people, because I think that's very arbitrary, is what people help people with. Everybody has a different value set point on that, on what is helping somebody. For some people, it may be, I'm not going to help them unless I can give to a third world country, or I can't do this, or I can't do this. But, there's help in your own backyard too. So, so I guess it gets very, personal about what what becomes that, but
yeah.
but it's interesting.
You're right. If you are able to generate that kind of income, like it really becomes a testament of who you are, what you do with that money,
right?
Right. And some of us can't imagine what it's like to have an extra $70,000 to do whatever we want,
right?
And I would like to believe more of us would utilize that money to help others, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how that is obviously going to be defined differently. Whether it's putting that money into research that is going to help future generations, or putting that money into programs that are helping people who are going through hard times now.
Right.
Exactly. And I mean, there's a lot of ways you can utilize money in great ways. There's a lot of ways you can utilize money in terrible ways. And at the end of the day, I think it's just a testament of who you are.
Yeah. It all comes back to, as we said earlier, to your values and, and what you believe in, and, kind of your life experiences, how you view opportunities. Kind of it all correlates and comes into one big ball that you either pass or throw, or or shoot 3 points with. So it's it's interesting, and it's interesting too when you talk about using 70,000 as the benchmark. There are some small business owners out there which if they make 70,000 in a year, it's going to be a great year for them. So it's just also relative.
It is very relative, and the other thing, right? And this just popped in my head, is you don't need an extra $70,000 to make a difference.
No.
In the world, right? So often I feel like people are like, I can't give any of this money for any good purposes until I reach that point.
Right.
It's like, well, your chances of reaching that point are very unlikely, because you're not figuring out how to utilize the money you have now to the ends you want. And so to be able to actually get to that end is going to be extremely difficult for you, I feel.
Well, and I also think people, a lot of times, they get so focused on the money, they forget that they have time to give.
Yeah.
And it's not just, I'm going to give X amount of dollars. It's, I'm going to give X amount of hours, because that's something that most of us can find. And we forget, and sometimes that's not as valued as much as X amount of money. But if I have an hourly rate of what I charge, when I charge hourly, this is how much I charge per hour. So if I think I've got 100 hours to give over the course of the next 2 months, then that could be $20,000 that I'm giving, or 30,000, depending on what I set as my hourly rate of what I'm doing. So, and that's very valuable as well. And we forget we can gift experience, and we can gift time. It doesn't have to be dollars and cents. And sometimes time is more valuable. Going to spend time with children in foster care, I mean,
or your own children,
children, yes, or your parents, or whatever.
Exactly. We even if you have a value on your time, right? Like, my services are worth $20 an hour, $50 an hour, $100 an hour, $500 an hour. Like, I don't care what your hourly services are, right? Sometimes the time you spend with one person is so valuable that their life will be changed forever. And it might take one small tiny moment to do that. Even so much as a smile has literally changed people's lives forever. One smile. And what does that cost you? Right?
Holding the door open for somebody when you're walking out, man or woman, hold the door open for somebody walking out of the restaurant, or or the bathroom, or whatever. It's, it's just those simple things that we forget. Letting somebody in on the interstate into the lane,
Yeah.
And this happens in Atlanta around all the time where, traffic signals are a serving suggestion. They're not required.
Oh boy.
But, and people all the time, if you put your blinker on, they tend to ignore you. But if you just barge right in, you barge right in. But, just letting somebody in. And I have to say, I'm probably guilty of that too. Got to get where I'm going,
and sometimes that's just a product of where you're at, right?
Yeah, exactly. How much traffic, but yeah, I mean, it's just those little things, and the random acts of kindness that happen around,
Definitely,
that can make a difference.
There's a book out there called Love 2.0,
Yeah.
which is basically our concepts of love. Is love 0.0 would be love of yourself, right? Which you have to start with yourself first, because you can't give what you don't have, right? So you start with yourself. You have to love yourself, because that's required first before you can actually love someone else. And I've been in this situation where I didn't love myself really.
Sure.
And I've been in relationships where I didn't fully love myself, but I was with someone else, and those relationships all ended terribly. Why? Because I hadn't started with myself, and I hadn't put good value into myself first, which led to really bad relationships, So you have to start with love 0.0.
Absolutely.
And then you have love 1.0, which is what we normally think of when we think love, like our children, our parents, our siblings, the people who are really close to us, maybe a best friend, right? And that's like your love 1.0, and that's what most people think of when they think of love, right? Mm-hmm. And then the book Love 2.0 talks about what is the next level, and really it's just the little acts of kindness that goes around. Having a conversation with the cashier as you're getting ready to go through the line for your groceries, or having a small conversation with your server about their day, and like these things can change people's lives. It's so simple. It's just a tiny thing. Might take 5 minutes out of your day, right?
Put the phone down.
Exactly. Put the phone down when you're having a conversation.
Yeah. Or put the phone down when you're going through the grocery store checkout line. That drives me crazy. I hate to see that happen. When people are on the phone and they don't even acknowledge who's there. It's like there's a human standing in front of you and you're talking on the phone. I'm sorry,
Yeah. I definitely understand that.
Yeah. I'm getting to the point where my phone is staying in the car. I'm getting to the point where I'm not answering my phone all the time. If you call me today, I'm sorry I didn't answer the phone. But just because I'm trying to respect that time that is either mine, and just because we can be reached 24/7 doesn't mean we should.
Exactly.
So it's starting. I'm starting to like be the opposite, be the antithesis.
Definitely. I've got a mentor of mine, Brian Johnson. He's completely radical with his phone use. He basically hasn't used it for like years now.
Wow.
The only way to get in communication with him is either through Slack, if you're part of his Slack group, which he uses for his team, or through his wife. Like if you're not in his Slack and you don't have his wife's number, you're not going to get a hold of him ever.
Yeah.
Right?
So now how does he do business then?
Well, this is a great question. He utilizes Slack, and he has people handle the communication that's not him. Right? Huh. And his team knows that when he's on Slack, he can be communicated with. And if he's not on Slack, you're not going to get a hold of him. And if it's a dire emergency, you get a hold of his wife.
Wow.
That's the only way you get a hold of him.
Yeah,
now he's like the far extreme.
In, right?
He likes to call himself a hermit, right?
Yeah.
And he's kind of transforming himself in more recent times a little bit. But it's been quite a few years where he's been in what he calls hermit mode, which is basically you can't get a hold of him unless it's very specific circumstances.
Cody, thank you for making me feel better about not answering the 2 phone calls I didn't answer an hour ago. It's like, I'm about to get on this podcast. I'm not going to answer the call.
Definitely.
So thank you.
I appreciate that because then we get to have this awesome conversation.
Yeah.
And like phone usage has become so destructive
Yeah.
There's a study where they took two different groups of people, right? They took one group of people who had their cell phones out during like a test. They were taking some sort of standardized test. And the other group of people that didn't have the phones on them at all, right? And the people who had the phones on them did significantly worse than the people who didn't have the phones on.
Is that
At
diversion
all,
of
right?
attention? Yeah.
Yeah. Now it gets crazier, right? If the person at the front of the room, right, the teacher or the proctor or whatever that person's role is, right? If they had a phone on the table in front of them, not even using it, just on the table in the same room as the people taking the test, the scores went down as if they had their own phones on them.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I'll have to Google that.
That is how significant of attention phones draw from us.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be our phone. If it's a phone in the same room as us, is already distracting our attention.
That's interesting. Yeah. You know, my son is 21, and so he's an only child. We were a little bit later having him, and so when he was little and we would go out to restaurants, you know, we never let him take a Game Boy or a PS2 or whatever the games were, you know, in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
That sounds weird. You know, when it was 2 or 3, and it would be so easy to hand him one of those and train, you know, just say, here, you know, make yourself comfortable, because we didn't have smartphones then. Smartphones didn't come out for a while, but they did have the little Game Boys or the little, you know, portable things. But we never let him take those because we just felt like, you know, if he was going to be at the dinner table, he was going to sit and talk to us, and that was not an easy way to entertain him. And it wasn't until much later we were sitting at a restaurant, and of course he used to hate that, especially when he was 7 and 8, and he would have to talk to the people at the table instead of getting to indulge in you know, games like everybody other kid around him was getting to do. So later, he was probably maybe 15 or 16. We were at a restaurant and we were looking at the people next door, and all of their kids, they were all heads down playing games. Nobody was talking. And he looked over, and the words that every parent wants to hear was, I get it. You were right. I understand why you did what you did. And it was like, yes. You know?
Victory.
Yes, victory. And he understood, you know, why the mechanics of that. So now as a 21-year-old, he can actually have a conversation with people at a dinner table that, you know, other of his friends cannot do.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's really interesting, you know, when you see the kids that are his age that are growing up now. I think he's like on the very beginning cusp of what they're calling Gen Z. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see that group, the next behind your group of generation coming up, how the technology is going to change them.
Definitely.
And social.
It's already having an impact. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a large group of that generation right now who don't really understand how to have conversations, right. You know, and right. That's a really bad place to be when you get into the workforce. Yeah. Because you have to have conversations.
You have to. And I did read, and I'd have to go back and look up and read, you know, and delve into it a little bit more. But I did read that the Gen Z, because they've grown up with the technology, it's not so special and unique. They grow up so they could look at something, put it back down. They're not going to be so anti-focused as the millennial generation is purported to be. You know, that they get in and they get on and they start playing with them. Whereas this, and I see this with my son, he'll look at a text, he'll put it back in his pocket, and he just keeps right on going. So I think that'll be interesting to see the differences in the two generations growing up now with the technology and how it affects them.
And I have some hesitation in that theory, right? Because to some extent, I can see that being true. Like, because you've become normalized to it, it doesn't impact you at such a high level. But just because it doesn't impact you at such a high level doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't impact you at all. And I think that is a huge thing. It's I'm trying to think of the exact quote, but basically to become normalized to a sick nation is not a showing of health, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, and that's a very good point you made up about the new normal. What's the normalization of it? Because disruption is still disruption, even though
Mhm.
it's quick. And you brought up a good point that I hadn't thought about is, okay, yeah, he might could put it in his pocket, but it's still disrupting what you've done. And now you still have to go back to the task at hand, whatever that may be. How much longer is that going to take? I think I read the study somewhere that said took 20 minutes to get back on task when you've had a
Yep.
disruption. So
I've read
is that
something very
yeah,
similar, like 15 to 30 minutes somewhere in
yeah,
there's usually what they say. And different reports say slightly different
right.
things,
And
but
depending,
it's
I guess,
around
the
that time zone.
individual and stuff like that. So yeah. So that will be the interesting study to watch is this supposed new normal going to change that dynamic of
Well, and
disruption?
I would venture to go out and say it's not going to change the dynamic, because I think some of these things are just very inherently
Mhm.
wired into us, the way we function, and the way phones are designed, and apps, and all these fun gizmos and gadgets we've got. They're designed to overtake our attention. They're literally designed to be addictive. Like,
Keep
it's
you there. Yeah.
designed to be like
Yeah.
that. like
Yeah.
like it's designed so much like that, that a lot of the people who create these technologies don't even allow their kids to utilize them.
Yeah. That's
Like,
crazy.
Steve Jobs didn't let his children use an iPod or an iPad, right?
That's
Because he
crazy.
understood how they were utilized. Like, if the creator doesn't let their own family utilize the technology they're creating,
Right.
that's a red flag in my mind on values,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Very cool. Yeah.
So and like, when we can't multitask. That's what a lot of the science is saying right now.
Right.
It's like impossible to multitask. What we do is we task switch, which basically means we put focus here and then we switch focus here and then we
Mm-hmm.
switch focus back. And every time you switch focus, you have to there's a little bit of a startup you have to do,
Yeah.
right? Even if it's not the full 15-20 minutes, right? There's always something.
Right.
For
Right.
instance, right, you're reading in a book, a text message goes off, so you look at your phone and then you go back to the book, right? How often do you look at the exact word you stopped on,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
rare.
Yeah.
Usually you go back a sentence or two and start it over,
Or a
right?
page or a paragraph or yeah.
Exactly. And so that's the cost of task switching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you try to take into account it takes 15 to 20 minutes
Mm-hmm.
to, or even maybe even 30 minutes to really get your focus in onto one thing, like to the highest level, and you have distractions coming at you like every minute now,
Yeah.
right? You have a generation of people that are normalized to never having focus.
Mm-hmm. So the interesting question will be is how do you, as we move forward, how are we going to adapt the new normal, and how much work is actually going to be getting done? How are we going to adjust to this, and how are or are we going to become like your mentor, the hermit that only you can only come, talk with me through Slack because this is something I can control. I control when I go on to Slack or when I don't. My business coach, he has an autoresponder on his email that I tried for 2 days that basically says, thanks for emailing me. I do my emails in the morning and at night. And and it's a really funny, cute, fun email to read that says, I'm not letting you disturb me. I'm going to say on my task, and I will reply at my convenience, not yours.
Yeah.
And I tried it, and it didn't sit well with me, with the way I do business. So I'm like, all right, let me try to figure out another way to do this. I wish we could put text autoresponders on our iPhones that says, hey, I'll get back with you in about an hour. I got
Yeah.
it. Quit texting me. I got your text. No, you don't need to call me to see if I got the text. I got it. I just hadn't answered it yet. so yeah, I guess
Definitely.
yeah, there's our business, Cody. We can go in together with business and design an app that does that. If iPhone
Awesome.
lets you do it.
Oh man. Yeah. And I would love to be able to one day, now this is long into the future. It's not anytime soon. But I would love to one day create a hardware that allows you to be fully productive. And what that means is very up in the air right now. But it's one of those lofty ideas I have for the future of creating not just the software, but an actual hardware that'll allow you to fully stay productive.
I can give you a start on that. Go to Office Depot and buy a lockbox and throw your phone in it and your computer in it and your iPad. That's being a little tongue in cheek, but it's almost it's almost that it's where it's going to get, that you just kind of have to put them away and and
put them in a different room, have like a box under a box that you put it in when you're working on certain things.
But there, I was kind of laughing about that, but there is some value to that, and that could be more of an educational thing about teaching people how to be productive now and in the new normal.
Definitely. Yeah. And there are a lot of people that are fighting for that too right now. Not just me, but like my mentor, Brian Johnson, he's one of the people that fights for things like that. He's the guy who does put his phone in a box under a box in the closet. He's literally the guy who does that. So, so that actually,
there's got to be a better normal than that, though. That's a little extreme.
Well, I mean, it works for him though.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not necessarily always the right first step. Right. Yeah. It's kind of like looking at LeBron James and being like, okay, I've never played basketball, but I plan to be LeBron James tomorrow.
Right.
Like it doesn't usually work that well.
Right.
It's kind of that kind of a situation you've got going on. He's kind of set up all his systems so he's able to do that. That's not most people's normal. And I don't think it should be most people's normal.
Well, and you have the passion to want to do that. We've kind of come for a circle with the conversation, because we're back to, systems and routines and passions and, and finding what your new normal is and what works for you, and, and putting it all in. So it's really it's a very cool place to be in this era of life, whatever your age is, because there's always stuff to learn. There's always there's so much information out there, and there's so much cool stuff out there that that it's and we'll look for the new normal for when you design your product.
Exactly how many years out in the future it is. I mean, it's not happening right now. This is not my plan at the moment. I have other things I'm focused on right now. But it's one of those, I've got a lot of big ideas that I would love to implement into the world. And just because I have these lovely ideas, right? And tying this back into what we were talking about, right? These are home run ideas.
Oh yeah.
Right? I'm not expecting to get a home run today. I'm running the RBI, let's keep getting on base, let's get that good average going. I don't need to, strike out 500 times to try and get a home run right now.
And sometimes you just need to bunt the guy over or
exactly.
girl. Just bunt him over, do your thing, and walk away because you've done your part for the team. So it's there's a lot of cool stuff to do.
No doubt. So Lori, how did you get onto this path with all this wonderful knowledge we've been talking about and all this fun stuff? How did you get here?
It's real, it's kind of funny because I started out, trying to condense a long story, because I'm a little older than you, but I started out.
Wrong with that. Hey, some people have long lives and they have really short stories, and there are some people who've had short lives and have very long stories.
I counted up one day. It took all 10 fingers and all 10 toes plus a couple to figure out all I've done, so all the different things that led me here. But I originally started out being a teacher, and I was going to, have the 2.5 kids and teach and have my summers off, and we were going to take great vacations.
The white picket fence, and the dog, and the nice,
dog and the cat,
the pool, and the nice community where you walk outside and you're like, "Hey, Joe, hey,
can I borrow a cup of sugar
today?"
Yeah. And then, and then life changes, and then, life changes. And then I, as you go forward, I discovered that I could not afford date clothes on a teacher salary, because I was now found myself single again. So I left teaching and went to, just said I wasn't going to sign my contract, which for a teacher is a big deal. because you always sign the contract, because that means you know that if you don't find a job, you got a job.
Yeah.
So I just said, you know what, if I do that, I will be back to teaching. And went to work for a company that I learned, kind of got started with my graphics and my print background and design background, and that all kind of coalesced into what I had taught anyway. So, you know, just one job led to another, and I met my husband, who was from New Jersey, and moved up there and worked for a company, very small business. You know, it was just the two of us. And after about 3 or 4 years of that, I realized that I'm basically giving him half of my profit to carry my receivables, and that's it. I was doing all my own invoicing. I was doing everything else. The only thing he was doing was carrying my receivables.
Huh.
So I really had it was not a conscious decision to become an entrepreneur. It was just a selfish, I want to keep all my money decision. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to start my own business. I'm going to do my own thing. And I said, I will never compete with him. I will not go after his clients, who, you know, I took out 99.9% of my clients. The only one that didn't come with me was one I had just started with, and she didn't know me. And so I started, you know, I woke up one morning and it was like, holy S, what have I done? And started my own business and haven't looked back. And then, but that was in 1994. And I was doing marketing packaging. I was doing binders and folders and software packaging and video packaging. And this was when, you know, internet was still a dial-up. People didn't really start having internet. People didn't have email addresses. So
the dial-up tone in the background.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And what is this internet thing? Nobody really knew. So in 2006, all of a sudden, everybody was, you know, people didn't need customized binders. They didn't need video packaging because live stream, you know, Netflix was just kind of starting to come in, and, you know, people were ordering discs online, and, you know, they would bring them to their mailbox, and
Blockbuster was slowly dying.
Yes. But companies were still doing some video packaging and some DVD packaging because it was cheaper at the time. But I could see the writing on the wall, and I said, you know what? I've either got to totally revamp my business, which at that point I was just kind of tired of it, or, you know, so I kind of, you know, you came to one of those crossroads of I go right or I go left. So I just decided I was going to go straight. And I went back to corporate. I, you know, worked for a couple of jobs. I sold print. I did a couple of things, and the economy was going down the toilet at that point. So there wasn't a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And I talked myself into a job for a digital company, a digital marketing company. He wanted somebody to set appointments for him, and he was going to pay me per appointment. And I just said, well, I can make because I'm pretty connected. I love connecting people. I can make you all the appointments that you want, but and you could pay me per appointment, but do you want good appointments, or do you just want appointments? Or do you want me to get you qualified people that you can actually sell? So teach me the business so that I can do this for you. And I ended up being his account manager for a lot of years, and discovered during that time that if I learned how to work the back end of a website, which I had no idea. I'd never, you know, that was not something that was me. But if a customer called in and said, hey, can you change this line to this line? If I did that and learned how to do it, they were happier because they got it done quickly. The support team was happier because I didn't have to write a ticket, and it didn't become a 3 or 4 day process just to change one line of text. So I kind of started doing on my own. I still have my copy of WordPress for Dummy downstairs from 2010.
Awesome.
And yeah, YouTube was starting to come in, and people were starting to so I'd start going onto YouTube and kind of learning, you know, I just taught myself. And then, you know, fast forward a couple of years, I got laid off, and a client that I went to high school with tried to find me and said, hey, I'm finally ready to redo my 2003 website. You know, I couldn't find you. And I said, well, you know, I'm no longer there. He said, well, are you interested in building one? Yeah, I'll never built one before, but hey, you know, I'll give it a try if you're patient. And he did, and he paid me. And then another friend came in, and I built theirs, and another friend. And finally a business coach said, why aren't you doing this full time? You know, what are you doing? So I'm like, you know what? You're right. I was building some pretty darn good websites, not knowing what I was doing. You know, so that's kind of, you know, came around just very much in a nutshell. It's a very meandering kind of path, but it all stayed like in the same area. It's still design. It was still But I found that through all of the years of working in all the different businesses and all the things I did, my marketing, I had a really good background in marketing. So, and somehow these things just occur to me, that might help somebody. So that's kind of the long story short of how it came to be. So the business coach on a Thursday said, why aren't you doing this full time? And on Friday, I started full time and said, you're right. I started with zero money, and I couldn't even afford the hosting of my own website at that point. But, hey, it all comes full circle.
Definitely.
So
and but that's awesome, right? Because like with that last piece that you were saying, like you didn't have the money to host your own website. Like how often does that prevent people from taking a step forward on the path that they really feel like is the path they should be on?
Oh yeah. Many times. I can't do this until I do this. I can't do this until I this. You just have to start.
Exactly.
You just have to, it doesn't matter where you're starting, just start. Because any step forward is going to be a step forward. If not, you're standing still or going backwards.
Definitely.
And it's because I'm just always a firm believer that if you sit down and stop and take a deep breath and figure out where you are and get rid of the obstacles and just say, what's the worst that can happen? Not much.
I was listening to a podcast earlier today, right? And I can't think of the name of the person who was speaking, but what she was saying is she does speaking, right?
Yeah.
And so she has a lot of times where someone will ask her a question like, what would you have done if everything went wrong, right? Because the person who's asking the question is in this position where they want to move forward, but they're worried about what's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
And she says, well, I always pose the question back to them. Well, what would you do if it went wrong? Mm-hmm. And they go, well, I would, I'd probably get a job and make things work somehow. Right. Mm-hmm. And she goes, great. Now, what would you do if everything went right?
Yeah.
And she says, it's always dead silent after that because people don't think about what would happen if it goes right. They already know exactly what's going to happen if it goes wrong. So why are you so focused about it going wrong if you already have a plan for it going wrong? You don't need to focus on it anymore. You already know. So start focusing on what would you do if it went right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. And it's, and looking at from that perspective, it opens up different doors that you didn't, if you put yourself, it's going right, then this is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And it's going to trigger something that will say, oh, I haven't thought of it that way. But, my theory about worrying is, of course there's things that I worry about sometimes, but I'm not a big worrier. Worrying doesn't solve anything. Worrying isn't going to change the outcome. Only action changes the outcome. So if you spend your productive time worrying, then you're not going to have a good outcome because you're stuck. But if you spend that time and think, okay, let's think outside the box, let me put the quotation marks up again, then there's a lot of value in that. Thinking outside, what can I do differently? Okay, let me walk through this process. What does this look like? It's like you said, if you're looking at it as if it's going right, you're going to see the path. It may not be the path that you chose or you thought about, but there's going to be a path there. Might be small, might be thin, but it lets you go and you go forward.
Definitely. And in my mind, I just imagine a mountain, right? That's ahead of you, right? And there are some people that are trying to scramble up these really craggly rocks, and they're like, this is the only way to get up there, right? And so most people just try and scramble up these rocks, and there's no footholds or anything. And so they're just kind of they're jumping, trying to get up, and then they fall back down. And then they're they just continue doing the same thing over and over. And if they would just stop for a moment and then look around and be like, oh, wait, hold on. I think that's a path over there. And it looks not really steep. Maybe if I go over there, I get these guys are saying this is the only way to do it, but maybe if I try this, something different will happen. Right. And then all of a sudden, it's a small path, but then it gets really wide and it's almost flat going all the way around to the top of the hill.
Right. Or Cody, it could be still really steep,
Yeah.
It's just a different level of steep, or maybe the steep isn't as long, or it's a shorter steep, or it's a, it's a steep, but it's going a different way. I always say everything is fixable. It may not be fixable in the way that you vision the fixable, but everything is fixable. I hate the
Definitely.
word no. No, you can't do that. Oh, watch me. that's a challenge. Challenge accepted.
And
Yeah.
I love that kind of mindset, right? Because I think more people should see no as a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that Zig Ziglar talks about a lot, who's awesome, fantastic person
Yeah.
on sales, right? No isn't a no, right? No means that you've reached a decision maker and that they just don't have enough information to make the best decision possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Right.
all a no means, right?
Right.
Which
Or
means, okay,
it's the proverbial not now.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then even if it's not now, are you sure it's not now? Because
Yeah.
maybe it is what you need now.
Yeah.
Maybe, right? Maybe you're trying to get through a wall, right? And there's a door right next to the wall. And I this is just the key to get through that door,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
And if you want to get through the door, I've got the key. I mean, you can continue to pound on the wall and hope you Hulk smash through it, but there's
Right.
no guarantee it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But
Or
I've got the key.
just ask for the key. Oh, you want the key? Huh. Ask for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like so many times people take the no as like that's the end of the conversation. Like
Right.
I failed, right?
Right.
And when I feel like no should be a challenge, like okay, not like I have to show you I'm better, right? But like
No.
okay,
Yeah.
awesome. I just haven't shown you why this is good for you.
Right.
And it's not about me. It's not about why it's great for
Mhm.
me because
Yeah.
the only reason it's great for me is because I get paid at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
and
And that doesn't motivate the other person.
no, but that brings up the whole sales conversation, which is probably a whole nother podcast. But it's it's the whole, I'm working on my marketing pack, and one of the things I say is sales is yucky. Sales is not yucky, because if you truly have something that you believe in and that will help someone, will it particularly help you? Maybe not, but it will help somebody out there. Then you're not selling them something. You're giving them what they need at the time. And that's the way I love to look at business and life philosophy and everything, is that if I can help somebody with what they need at the time, I'm not selling them something. I'm selling them something they don't want is selling them a vacuum cleaner that when they've got that cleans carpet when you got hardwood floors. Now that's selling something that people, that's the old yucky sells.
Yeah.
Selling.
That's the used car salesman model.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna piss off the used car salesman, but yeah, I'll let you do that.
And
But
you know what? There's good
Yeah.
used car salesmen out there, but
Absolutely.
that's the stereotype,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. So what can I do to make this sale today? You just lost that sale today.
Yeah, exactly. And
Nothing.
even if you got that sale today, you don't get the next sale from that person. They're gone
Right.
after that.
Oh, good point. Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
and any business owner knows that the repeat sale is worth far much more than
Yeah.
a new sale because it's a lot easier to get a repeat sale than it is to get a new customer.
Oh yeah.
That's why so many businesses are doing subscription models today.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's easier to maintain a customer and get them to continue to pay than to onboard a brand new customer that has no relationship with you.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's so much, as I said before, there's so much cool stuff about business out there today that it's fun to, and the beauty of our technology today is you've got access to all of this. You've got access to all the, every things that people are thinking and new points of view and, all the content that's out there in the blogs and the books and, all that kind of stuff. It's, it's such a podcast. It's such a fun place to be in because you can get so much access to that. And I love that. Love listening to the podcast, love reading books. I'm a big reader, so love all that.
Definitely. Me too. I 100% I'm in a full agreement with you there. That's why I'm working on my own book. That's why I have my own podcast.
Oh,
I
cool.
love contributing to that, right?
Yeah.
But there's a big key that we all have to remember, right? And it's not just about getting into that information, but it's about what do you actually do? How do you act from that information?
Right.
That, it's just like your values, right? Your values are worthless unless you act in them. Your purpose is worthless unless you act into your purpose.
Good point.
Your business is worthless unless you act on your business. It's all about how do you act at the end of the day.
Oh, right. Yeah, I just finished. There's a gentleman by the name of Mark Schaefer. He's my new business crush. I've read every. Okay. I think I've got one more book to read of his, but he's a big marketing guy, and he just published a book in March, I think, called The Marketing Rebellion, the Third Rebellion. I'd have to look it up. I just but Mark Schaefer. But he talks about the humanness of business and the humanness of marketing and where businesses are. And I just soaked that book up. There was so much knowledge and good information in there. It's like, I can't wait to use this in business and in life, because there's life lessons in there as well about being, it goes back to a lot of stuff we talked about, your random act of kindness and being human. And, it's just like, this is so cool.
Definitely. So now since we're talking about this, right, what is the number one thing that you're going to act on from that book?
I'm focusing on the humanity. I'm focusing on how to make my business more human. And that can also, it's kind of I'm taking it more into human being the customer experience. I'm really looking into how customer experience can be applied in my business. What can I do to make that a better customer experience? We met at a New Media Summit, a customer experience expert, and I've been listening to her, and just pulling in a lot of the information that you're learning, but just the humanness of the company and how to be transparent and how to be human. I mean, there is no other way to describe it. You're focusing on what your client is and what they experience as they go through each step by step of their process, because designing a website can be very confusing and very scary for a lot of small business owners. It's a big part of their budget. There's a lot of information, and if you don't do it right, it can be a waste. So I want to make sure that's my takeaway, is how to make my process more human.
So how are you going to make it more human?
I knew you were going to ask that.
because right, like it's the pretty language, it's all nice, but like what are you going to act on?
Well, it is. I'm redoing my site right now. My site is 4 years old, so it definitely needs to do as I say, not as I do. So I'm redoing my site right now, and I'm putting in the conversation that speaks to, directly to why you need a new website, what's going to happen when you need a new website, and then once you sign up and you come to work with me, then the whole back end process is going to be smooth. It's going to be, this is step by step. I'm going to hold your hand through the beauty of the technology and say, this is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to do next. This is what you're going to do next, which I think, is what happens with a lot of small website design companies, is that they bring on people and they get caught up in the system, and the people who don't know what they're doing get lost in the shuffle. And then all of a sudden it becomes well, my website's not ready. Well, you don't have what you need to give us because we've gotten lost in this process. So I'm really trying to humanize and make the process simple.
Which is awesome, because that is huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is how do I make it easier for the people around me to do the things they're trying to do? At the end of the day, that's what most of us are looking for, right? It's like, I want to get this thing done, but it's a pain in the arse the way it is right now. Yeah. And if I could just get a little bit of help, right? And so often, right, I found this with marketing tools, is like they create like this really cool tool and it's going to do all these awesome things, and like you try to do it and you can't figure it out, and you're like, I feel like I just wasted a lot of money. And if you're lucky, there's a 30-day money back guarantee, and after like 5 days you're like, this is worthless, just give me my money back.
Yeah, it's, it's a lot of the stuff that you see about, oh, well, you need to go out and you need to go start doing this on Instagram, but nobody tells you how to do it on Instagram. And I'll use this analogy
Yeah.
because I've tried to go back to the gym, and my son is he's a gym rat, and he's like, why don't you go to the gym? Why don't you go to the gym? And I said, you know what? I want to go walk into the gym, and I want you to go with me, and I want you to show me how to operate the equipment. I want you to show me how to lift the seat. I want you to show me how to adjust the weights. He's like, Mom, everybody knows how to do that. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be self-conscious and go in and have to ask. I want to know. And that's a silly thing. And it's certainly not the reason mentally I don't go to the gym, but there are a lot of other reasons. But it's the one thing that I could explain to say, I want to know what to expect when I go in there, and I want somebody to guide me through it so I don't look like an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm not.
That's so normal.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes for so many things that we do in life, that if people would just explain in basic language. My mother-in-law has never been to a drive-through. She has never ordered food from a drive-through because she doesn't know how to do it. I mean, how basic can that be? So my husband is going to take her and let her order from a drive-thru and show her what to do, because she doesn't want to feel like an idiot. So how many of us don't do things because we don't want to feel like an idiot at the drive-thru?
Definitely. And all of us do that, right? Like, I do that all the time. There's definitely things where I'm like, I'm not going to go into that because I don't know enough about it, and I feel like I'm not going to get the support to learn about it.
Right.
Right. And so, like, what's the point of trying to do it?
Oh yeah.
And oh my gosh, like, so many people go into a workplace, right? They just started, right? And they're hoping that their manager, their leader, whatever, will be there to guide them, right? And not just be like, all right, here it is, go for it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
my training manual.
Yeah, no. My first corporate job, right? I was doing accounts receivable. I came into the job, right? My first day of work was, okay, well, we can't get you into the systems yet because we're having some trouble with our IT. Here's a list of phone numbers. Start calling.
Yeah.
That was my training. Like, no joke. That was my training.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, okay, I'm just going to do what I can do with this and hope for the best.
Right.
Like, I wasn't given any tips on how to make a phone call. I wasn't taught how to use the phone system.
Oh, wow.
And I've been normalized to a regular cell phone, so I don't have to press 9 to dial out. So I'm trying to dial the freaking number, and it's like just silence, and I'm like, why won't it make a call, right? And I'm like, and then you have to look like an idiot and talk to one of your coworkers, be like, I'm trying to make a call and it won't let me. Why? And they're like, oh, you have to press 9. It's like, oh, okay, 9.
Yeah.
Now it
well,
goes
and not
out.
only that, but it's a different way you hold the phone.
Yeah.
So physically, it's different. It's not the flat phone. There is a handset. Yeah. And with the, with corporate jobs and all the downsizing and the changing and the moving around and all that kind of stuff that happens in corporate world today, I mean, that's something that's so easy to overlook. Teaching somebody how to use the phone.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, exactly. And how many people quit their jobs because they didn't learn how to use the phone, right? And they would rather quit and look like, oh yeah, this is my choice than to get fired, right? Because no one taught them how to use a simple freaking phone.
Yeah.
Right? And then people wonder why our statistics in leadership are atrocious. You want to hear this statistic? This is a wonderful statistic. Over 50% of people trust a complete stranger more than their boss.
That's amazing. Yeah.
How sad is that? You spend 40 hours a week with the people you work with and presumably your boss, or at least a decent amount of that time with your boss, right?
Yeah.
And you trust a complete stranger who, for all you know, could be an axe murderer more than your boss, who 99% of the time for a fact is not an axe murderer.
But that also, Cody, goes back to the skills of leadership. I mean, there are so many skills of leadership that are not taught.
Yeah.
That are not, that part of, to me, being a leader is you take care of your people. You teach them how to use the phone. And when you said that, my question, internally I was thinking, did they even tell you what to say when you made the phone calls?
Yeah.
Or did
No.
they call people?
For me, no one taught me what to say on the phone call either.
Call people.
I
So
just
what am
called
I
and
saying?
Actually,
Hi, I'm Cody. Nice to talk to you.
I think I listened to someone else make the phone call first, just so I
Yeah.
had kind of an idea, but that doesn't mean they taught me. That just means I had the idea to listen to someone else first and watch them. And for all I know, they could have been doing it completely wrong, right? It's just that was what I had access to, so I was gonna hope it was gonna work.
Right. That's funny. Yeah.
But you're totally right. Like even in the world of leadership, right? There's so much that's untaught. There's so much confusion, and people want to do well as leaders. They just don't know how. And it's not like the tools and resources aren't there, right? Because there's so many books, there's so many audios, podcasts, all that jazz, right? Mm-hmm. That's on leadership. And yet we still have so many problems within leadership. And that's,
I'm sorry, I interrupted. I don't think that leadership is something that you can learn from a book. Leadership is something you have to act on and you have to practice. And, you're right. There is so much good information out there. In fact, before we had the podcast, I'd been meaning to read Simon Sinek's Why Leaders Eat Last. And I thought, let me download this real quick and start reading it before I talk with Cody, so we can talk leadership. But, and I got the sample chapter, I think. But there's so much information there. But if you don't practice it, and you don't practice being a leader and practice these skills and, what people perceive as good leadership, then it doesn't matter what you read if you don't practice it. And managers or business owners or, people that go out, connect other people that are leaders. There's, in Atlanta, there's a lot of networking that have leaders and stuff. So, you see good leaders all the time, and then you see some that aren't.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think a lot of this actually has to do with the way that the development world is set up, mm-hmm. and how people pursue the development world.
Yeah.
Because how I see the development world is there's kind of 5 main types of development out there. You have your teachers, right, who teach you the basic steps on how to do something. You need your teachers to get you your start, right? Like you can't read unless you know your ABCs. Mm-hmm. So you get someone to teach you the ABCs so you can learn words, so you can learn how to read, right? Now there's a difference between knowing how to read and being able to read well and understanding everything you read, mm-hmm. right? So there's a transition that has to happen, and that goes from the teaching into the other things, where you have mentorship is one of the big ones people talk about, where you have someone who's further down the road with you, who teaches you about how they went about doing it, so you can try and follow them on that path. Then you have a coach who helps you see into the future and act into the future, right? You have your healers or your therapists or your counselors, that kind of general area. You could technically split that up more, but mm-hmm. I try to group them together for ease. Yeah. And they're definitely different. Like, I'm not saying they're the same at all, but that I group them together for ease. But they usually focus on past things that have happened in the past and utilize that to help you overcome what's happened in the past so you can act in the future.
Gotcha.
That's kind of the big difference between that group and the coach is solely focused on the future. Right. They're not really focused in the past. And then your last group is the consultant, right? And the consultant is someone you hire to do the work for you so that you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And
so you don't have to do it the past or the present. Yeah.
Exactly. So you just don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah. Right. And they're fantastic, right? And I think you need all of those areas in your life. I think you need a coach. I think you need a mentor. I think you need a therapist or a counselor or, a priest. It might be, whatever it is. Sure. Right. I think you need teachers. And then I think you need consultants. I think they all play very valid roles in how you proceed forward. And I don't care like what area of life we're talking about. We can be talking about parenthood. I think those roles all play something very particularly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
even like you think like parenthood, like the consultant, like what would you use a consultant for in the parenting world? Well, maybe you hire someone to do chores around the house so that you can actually spend more time with your kids
Right.
instead of doing the laundry.
Right.
Or
teaching them algebra.
Or teaching them algebra because you don't know how to do algebra.
Exactly.
Oh,
Bringing my algebra consultant in.
exactly. But like that's so true, right? Because
Yeah.
you might be a better parent because you hired someone to teach your kid algebra than try and muscle your way through something you don't really remember anything about.
Oh yeah. Well, I've talked about my 21-year-old. At one point where I live, when I worked my way through college and paid for college by teaching swimming lessons. At one point, I taught every kid within a 20-mile radius of where I live how to swim. I cannot teach my own kid to swim. It just, it's that mother-son dynamic. And even to this day, he's starting a business and he will not listen to me about marketing, which drives me crazy. But it's that same, I had to bring a consultant in to teach him how to swim.
Yeah.
So it's the same. And you also described the same, the perfect small group mastermind counsel for a small business owner. Having each one of those type of people, whether you're a parent or a small business owner or whatever you do in the world,
or a corporate leader or a nonprofit leader,
advisory board,
any
absolutely of it. Yeah, that's like the dream team that you just described.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I think it's really important for people to find all of those roles.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's very good. In fact, I can't wait till this come out so I can write them all down. So I'll write them all down again and use that because that's a very good point. And I like the way you broke it down. From teaching, we all need to be taught something.
Oh yeah.
Coaching,
and it never ends either.
No.
Right? Like so many people are like, oh yeah, no, I don't need any more education. Like I used to be one of those morons, so I can raise my hand here. I was one of those people at one point. And like there's always more to learn. Like there's never enough to ever say like I've learned it all. If you really think that, you have some problems you need to get figured out. And like I can say that because I was that person and I had problems that I did get figured out.
Cody, if it is on YouTube, we can all become experts in it. Hey, totally.
Everything's on YouTube now. Absolutely.
That's how I learned web design. YouTube and YouTube and WordPress for dummies.
Definitely. But the big key, right? Again, tying this all together again, right? Is you didn't just learn it, right? No. You took action on it. Absolutely. You actually implemented it. You actually used it. You took steps forward, right?
Oh, yeah.
You don't design websites today because you took some YouTube videos and you took some nice pretty notes. You do that because you actually did work in it and you built up your skills as you took that action, and now you're able to design awesome, amazing websites. Yeah.
And it's really cool too. I mean, I look at you and your background and what you're doing with the podcast and you're taking action and moving forward and and interviewing some cool people on podcasts and it's just the same. We're taking action, we're moving forward and what we're passionate about.
Exactly. And like, I'm not perfect. I can, even like me speaking right now, I know I'm not perfect. I screw up. I listen to every single conversation I have, right? So I know I screw up. Like, and then I don't edit these, right? So whatever screw ups I recognize, you're going to hear them too. And sometimes I sound like a moron. I do. I get it. Right.
Well, you know what? Hey, you know what? Here we're coming full circle again. We've had a lot of circles in this, but that's what makes it human. Because it's not so scripted and it's not so, that the flubs are what makes it fun to listen to. It's like
exactly.
And for the record, I haven't heard one, but
oh, that's okay. You'll hear them when you go back. I know there are some things I say. And I'm 95% sure I've said some of those things, and so like they're triggers for me now when I listen through it, and I'm definitely getting better at it. Like, but when I think that anytime you put something out into the world, right? You should give it a little bit of time and then come back to it and see how it
absolutely.
actually was, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it's a podcast or a YouTube video or like a social media post or any of that. I had a funny thing happen not too long ago. I was on Facebook, right? And Facebook has this awesome feature that really shows you how dumb you were in the past, where it shows you the memories of the past. You're like,
Oh, yeah.
they're like, hey, remember this thing that happened 6 years ago?
Yeah.
And I don't remember what the post said right now, but I remember reading through the post, and like I knew when I put that post out, I must have thought I was like some sort of philosophical genius. And I read it more recently, and I was all like, wow, that was really stupid. It's like, well, and the great thing is like I can learn now. I can go and be like, okay, well, one, I realize I've grown because I don't think that's a pot of gold anymore. I kind of realize it's a lot less than a pot of gold. I'm not going to give it a name right now, but trust me, it wasn't worth anything.
So did you repost it with what you learned?
I didn't repost it with what I learned.
Should.
That would have been really smart.
Yeah, you should go back and find
homework assignment for me now. I always like coming out with homework.
Repost it and say, this is why it was stupid then and why I learned.
That's genius. I'm going to have to go through and, talking about teachers. This is kind of funny. I'm part of the millennial generation, but like, I still don't understand social media 100%. Right? Yeah. Like I'm learning Instagram right now. That's one of the things I'm learning.
Well, you know what? We'll give you a little buy on this because you're a guy. And it took guys a while to get onto Instagram. So you're okay on that one. For a long time, it was like fully filled with females.
All right. So
you're now occasionally seeing men on there.
Okay. So a slight buy there.
You're giving a little bit of a buy. Not much.
Very slight buy there. I'm not going to give myself too much credit on that one. Yeah. But like I'm learning how to utilize it more effectively and how to utilize it not just in general but as a business owner. Yeah. And it's a really powerful tool if you know how to use it.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, you just don't know what you don't know, which is why you need to be taught, right? Which is why I've paid to learn how to Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will give you the buy because I will tell you that I'm female and I am just now starting to get on Instagram. So, and this is very much of a case of do as I say, not as I do, because it's sometimes you get so busy that you totally forget it. And I'm like, holy crap, I better start like building up my followers and stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, I hear you.
Building my stuff up. So yeah,
I got an awesome tool for you. I've got an awesome. I just recently took a course from Adam Shobo, right? And he is the podcast host of the $1 Million Mission. Awesome course. Okay. I would definitely recommend it because I went through it and it's like you were talking about with your services, right? The nuts and bolts and how do you actually go step by step by step. His course is exactly like that, but for Instagram.
Oh, that's cool. SHOBO? Shobo?
I think it's, oh gosh, I'm an awful, I can definitely put it in the show notes because I am not the greatest with names and it is something that I'm working on. And little key lesson for people who don't understand what I just did. I'm working on the power of my words. Oh. And so I'm not saying certain words for a certain reason. Okay. Last name is spelled SCHAEUBLE. Adam Schobel. And I may have mispronounced his name terribly. And Adam, if you're listening to this, I am really sorry about that because you're an awesome human being. But he's an awesome guy. And his whole mission is really cool. Do you know who he is by chance?
No, I don't, but I'm going to go look him up when we're done tonight. Yeah.
He calls himself the PhD, right? Which stands for previously heavy dude, right? And so he lost a ton of weight. And then he decided to make a mission of helping people lose 1 million pounds.
Was he at New Media Summit?
He was at the New Media Summit.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, I just didn't connect the last name. Okay. Yeah. When you said heavy dude, it's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. I remember him.
And he's a guy. He's
Yeah.
so cool. He's such
Oh
a
yeah.
cool guy.
Adam, I'm
He's got
sorry.
an awesome course. He's got an awesome course, and definitely, it just recently came out, and this podcast will air much later than we're speaking about today. So I can't tell you all the details about what's all coming out, but I can tell you it is an awesome course,
That's
and
cool.
I have been through it all.
That's cool.
So yeah, but like that's the importance of teaching, right? Is you don't know what you don't know. So you seek people who are willing to teach you the nuts and bolts of what you need, and then will guide you to the next phase, right?
Right.
And sometimes what's awesome is you'll have a teacher that becomes one of the other roles for you later on, whether it's a consultant or a coach or a mentor, right? Because I'm sure with your services, you become a consultant for many people too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, and that's really powerful when you can go from the first stage of having the teacher to the next stage, which really at the end of the day helps out a lot more than the teaching phase.
Right.
Because teaching only takes you so far.
Yeah.
You know, it's you can't teach all the very specific scenarios like we were talking in leadership, right? That's part of the challenge many leaders face is they've learn the different things, but there's a difference between learning it and doing it and applying all these things to the different lessons and then figuring out what went right and what went wrong. Right. It's so important to have that mentor or that coach or that consultant even, you know, within the world of leadership is because there's a huge difference between theory and practice.
Sure. Yeah. And if you take it and you go back to the first 4 levels of, the old saying that you don't teach, I'm just losing it. You teach someone, you don't throw somebody a fish, you teach them how to fish.
Yeah.
So, so if you take that and analogize it to this, so you teach them how to fish, then you teach them why they should fish. Then you teach them what's preventing them from fishing. And then when you get proficient in fishing, then you hire somebody to do the fishing for you. So exactly. it all comes together. Absolutely.
Exactly. I love that. Right. and that ends up being the difference between being the follower and being the leader, right? The follower does all the work. The leadership makes sure that the work gets done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. So there was one other thing you were talking about in your story that I thought was really neat. You were talking about how you had your one boss who was going to hire you to set up schedules. To set up their schedule, and they were going to pay you per schedule thing. An awesome thing that I noticed in your story, right, was the leadership position you took in that story, right? Mm-hmm. So often we think like your boss in that scenario is the leader, right? Because he's in the position of leadership, but you actually ended up playing the leadership position within your role because you didn't just say, okay, I'm going to do what you say. You said, well, wait, hold on a second, right? I can do what you say, but that's not necessarily going to lead to what you want. So let's work together so that we can get you to where you want to be.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's a huge thing in leadership is defining, creating the boundaries and creating the expectations, right?
Oh,
because
absolutely.
His expectation was very different from what you wanted the expectation to be. And you weren't pursuing mediocreness. You were pursuing excellence, which is a trademark of fantastic leaders, of legendary leaders. They don't pursue the mediocre, right? They pursue excellence. And that's what you were doing. I thought
that was good. I haven't looked at it like that. So that's cool. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that shift around. Yeah. I just always thought it was a funny story.
Oh no, it's a hilarious story, right? And like that happens all the time, right? Because people hire people to do a job, but they don't actually understand what they're hiring them for, or they don't create the expectations, or they don't create the boundaries, and then the relationship ends up not working, right? Because the person who has the job had a different expectation than the person giving the job. Because they didn't agree on those expectations.
Or you didn't know how to work the phone.
Right? So you get pissed off and you quit and leave, right? or you work the phone and it's just really bad because you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's a very interesting point to bring, because I think that's something that all leaders or managers or business owners can relate to, is that, you may have the need and you're just looking at, this is what I need to satisfy what I need today. But
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to saying, okay, I need this today because I need appointments, because I need business in, I need meetings so I can talk to people and get my stuff sold. But, if you look at it and say, all right, that might satisfy today's need, but tomorrow's need or next week's need or next month or next year, that is not going to serve me, because the backstory of that I didn't go into was that once a new client came in, there was no account manager to manage them. There was nobody to take care of customers that he had in house. So you bring all these customers in and they're going to leave because you've just spent all this time and money and paid me whatever, $75 appointment, but they're not going to stay because there's nobody to take care of them. So, you have to set that infrastructure in place, which is, is interesting. But it ended up that I think I set appointments from about 2 weeks and then ended up being his account manager. I didn't want to set the appointments.
Well, yeah. And the reason that happened, right, is because you were a leader, one. Two, you were pursuing excellence, right? And when you are a leader and when you do pursue excellence, opportunities do come.
Yeah.
Even if that wasn't what you were expecting at first,
Very
right?
true.
They will come out of the blue sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. And this has happened to me. This happens to every leader, right? There's this thing that people call luck, right? Which is all like this random thing came out of the blue. And like to a point, that's kind of true. But at the same time, there are people who are a lot more lucky than other people. And the reason is because they're doing things that aren't just left up the circumstance.
Right.
They're pursuing excellence. They're doing the hard work. They're making sure it gets done the right way. Right. And then they happen to find luckier opportunities more often.
Because they make luck happen.
Exactly.
And they recognize luck when they see it and they go pursue it.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it pops up as opportunities. And the thing is, opportunities are everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere. There's more opportunities today to do almost anything you want to do than has ever happened in history. And there's so many people who are like sitting at home thinking like, there's nothing I can do. My life sucks.
Yeah.
I
don't have the money for hosting.
And it's like, no, you're looking at it wrong. Right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot more to this than you're giving credit to. And you just have to take a step, right? In the general direction of where you're trying to get to. And all of a sudden things will begin to line up. Not perfectly every time. And sometimes you'll be heading down a path and you got to stop, go back a little bit and go slightly different path. Mm-hmm. Right? But when you start taking those actions, those opportunities start to pop up.
Yeah. But that's what makes it fun too, is exploring some of those little paths. Or off the beaten path kind of thing.
Definitely.
This is a cool waterfall because we went off the beaten path. And
I was just thinking a waterfall. You read my mind.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's and it's the little off the beaten path that we find some of the best gold, because it's not the norm. It's not what's expected. And that's what can make, doing what you do unique and different, because you're not doing the expected all the time.
I love that. Absolutely. So we've been having a long conversation. This is awesome.
I'm hoping my stomach growling is not showing through.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna let you eat. But before I let you eat, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you really, really want to talk about?
Cody, I can't think of a whole lot that we haven't covered in the last
like 2 hours.
On this podcast. We could talk about what you're doing for the 4th of July. We
Actually, it's
Were you
it's
going
my
on vacation?
stepfather's no, it's my stepfather's birthday on the 4th of July.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
like
He's
his
an
birthday
Independence Day.
every year is celebrated with fireworks. So that's
Oh,
that's
that's
pretty
very
neat.
cool. Yeah,
So
that's very cool.
I kind of already have a check mark on what I'm doing for 4th of July, and it's celebrating his birthday however he wants.
I totally understand that. Totally get that. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, honestly, my mind's a little blank at this point.
No worries. I understand. We dove into a ton of
Yeah,
different
we did. It
directions.
was
We went
fun.
all over the place. I had a great time.
We had a really long Sunday drive.
Exactly. Sunday drives can be so much fun if you
Yeah,
go on them with the right people.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And
Awesome.
were we talking about that when the podcast has started about the Sunday drive?
Oh, we talked about it before we
We
actually
did.
pressed.
Okay, then we better talk
So
about what we're
people,
going to say. Yeah. All right. We were talking about we were just going to take a Sunday drive and kind of let this conversation go where we go. And if you're in the Atlanta area, you know what 285 is. And I told Cody the story about when I was younger and 285 was new. So yes, I'm old. When 285 was new, my dad decided it would be fun to do a Sunday drive around 285. And it's about 60 miles. And when you're 10 years old, sitting in the back seat of a car with no seatbelt, it takes about 7 weeks to do that. So we were laughing about, just taking a nice Sunday drive. So we took a very long Sunday. We went 285 around a couple of times. I think. but
definitely.
but it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Good. No problem. Thank you. So Lori Lyons, if someone wants to get a hold of you, what is the best way or best couple of ways? I don't care. Throw in as many plugs as you want. What is the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, my website design company is called Ignite Marketing, but the website is www.ignitingyourbusiness.com. And then my online program is makeyourmarketingsimple.com. That's an online program. And for guests, if it's okay, I'll give them a
Sure.
freebie. Makeyourmarketingsimple.com/success. And I have
/success. I love
success.
it.
I have 3 simple shifts to clarify your marketing and help make your business more successful. There's a better title for that, but ask me an hour ago and I would have told you. I'm also on Instagram as Laurier Lyons _ and then Ignite Marketing _ and I'm on Twitter and Facebook. You can find me in all the there. If you get my freebie, it'll link me to everything. So you're welcome to link.
Awesome.
I'd love to building up my Instagram follows, as I said earlier.
Yes. Go on there, like and follow Lori. She's got some awesome stuff coming your way, especially if you're a business owner. It's going to be tremendously helpful. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, it will not be boring. I will tell you that. I promise you, it will not be boring. I'm not a boring person.
If this conversation has anything to say, there's no way it can be boring.
Yeah. Lots of fun. Thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for showing up. Really had a wonderful time, Lori.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Leadership Guide. Please make sure to go onto your favorite player of choice and there rate the show, then subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Then, if you truly want to be a legendary leader, share this episode with someone that you know will be impacted, because legendary leaders fuel not only themselves, but others as well to their heroic potential. If you want to unlock your heroic potential faster, then you will want to join the League of Legendary Leaders, an association of leaders who are dedicated to unlocking their heroic potential, unlocking the heroic potential of others, and where legendary leaders are born. The League of Legendary Leaders also has a goal to raise $100,000 monthly to support nonprofits that are actively undertaking causes to impact the future in areas including neurodiversity, character strength positive psychological research, homelessness, and more. Seize the call now. Go to www.theleadership.guide and click Get Free Guidance Now to propel you on your journey to legendary leadership. I'm your host, Cody Dakota, and I'm honored to have spent this time with you today. My final message for you, and listen closely. It's time. Wake up your heroic potential. Let go of your fears and anxieties, and let's discover what is possible on your journey to become a legendary leader. Emerge and become who you were meant to be.